Maya Johnson stepped out of the elevator on the 42nd floor, her heels clicking against the marble floor with confidence that belied the nervous energy coursing through her veins. The reception area of Sterling Industries was all glass and chrome, designed to intimidate visitors and remind them of the company's power. Maya had been here before, but never as the person holding the keys to the kingdom. The receptionist, a young woman with perfectly styled blonde hair, looked up with practiced politeness that quickly shifted to confusion. "May I help you?" "Maya Johnson. I'm here for the emergency board meeting," Maya replied, adjusting the leather portfolio under her arm. The receptionist's eyes widened slightly as she checked her computer screen. "Oh, let me call Mr. Patterson's office." Maya waited patiently, watching through the floor-to-ceiling windows as the city sprawled below. She had grown up in the projects just 20 miles from this gleaming tower, never imagining she would one day walk these halls with the authority she now possessed. Her journey from a scholarship student at community college to Harvard Business School had been marked by countless obstacles, each one making her stronger and more determined. The receptionist hung up the phone, her expression even more confused. "Mr. Patterson's assistant will be right out." Moments later, a stern-looking woman in her 50s emerged from the inner offices. "Ms. Johnson, I'm afraid there might be some confusion. The board meeting today is for executives only." Maya smiled politely. "I understand. That's exactly why I'm here." Before the assistant could respond, the conference room doors opened and several men in expensive suits began filing out, their voices carrying down the hallway. Maya recognized most of them from newspaper articles and company reports. These were the titans of Sterling Industries, the men who had controlled the company's destiny for decades. "Rebecca, who is this?" asked a silver-haired man Maya recognized as Harold Patterson, the current CEO and majority shareholder. "Mr. Patterson, this is Maya Johnson. She says she's here for the board meeting, but I think there's been some mistake." Patterson's eyes swept over Maya dismissively. "Young lady, I think you're on the wrong floor. The job interviews are handled by HR on the 15th floor." The other executives chuckled, and Maya felt the familiar sting of assumptions made based on her appearance. But she had learned long ago to channel that feeling into fuel for her ambition. "I'm not here for a job interview, Mr. Patterson. I'm here as the new majority owner of Sterling Industries." The laughter that erupted from the group was loud and genuine. Patterson wiped tears from his eyes. "That's rich. Honey, do you have any idea what this company is worth? We're talking about a $30 billion corporation." Maya reached into her portfolio and pulled out a thick legal document. "I'm well aware of the company's value. I also know that as of yesterday at 4 p.m., I acquired 51% of Sterling Industries through a combination of stock purchases, proxy acquisitions, and strategic partnerships." The laughter died immediately. Patterson snatched the document from Maya's hands, his face growing redder as he scanned the pages. The other executives crowded around him, their expressions shifting from amusement to confusion to alarm. "This is impossible," muttered Richard Sterling III, the grandson of the company's founder. "The Sterling family has controlled this company for 70 years. Maya had done her homework. She knew that Sterling's gambling debts and poor financial decisions had forced him to sell significant portions of his inheritance over the past decade. She had been quietly acquiring those shares through various shell companies and investment funds. "Not anymore," Maya said calmly. "And as the majority shareholder, I'm calling for an immediate restructuring of the company's leadership." The conference room fell silent except for the rustling of papers as Patterson continued reading. Maya could see the exact moment when the reality of the situation hit him. His face went pale, and his hands began to shake slightly. "How?" Patterson whispered. "How did you manage this?" Maya had been planning this move for 3 years, ever since she discovered that Sterling Industries had been systematically undervaluing companies owned by minorities and women, acquiring them at below-market prices. Her own family's small manufacturing business had been one of their victims 15 years earlier, destroyed by predatory practices that left her father bankrupt and her mother working 3 jobs to keep their family afloat. "I learned from the best," Maya replied. "I studied your company's acquisition strategies very carefully. The same tactics you used to destroy smaller businesses, I used to acquire your stock." "The irony is beautiful, isn't it?" The executives exchanged glances, and Maya could practically see the wheels turning in their heads. They were calculating how much money they stood to lose, how their reputations would be affected, and most importantly, what they could do to stop her. "This won't stand," declared Thomas Mitchell, the chief financial officer. "We'll fight this in court. There must have been irregularities in these transactions." Maya had anticipated this response. Every stock purchase, every proxy vote, every legal maneuver had been executed flawlessly. She had hired the best lawyers money could buy, many of them former Sterling Industries legal counsel who were intimately familiar with the company's vulnerabilities. "You're welcome to try," Maya said. "But I should mention that I've also uncovered some interesting accounting irregularities in your books. The SEC might find those documents very enlightening." The threat hung in the air like smoke. Maya wasn't bluffing. During her investigation into the company's acquisition practices, she had discovered evidence of tax evasion, environmental violations, and potential fraud that could bring down not just the company, but several of its top executives. Patterson set the documents down on a nearby table with shaking hands. "What do you want?" "What I want," Maya said, "is justice for every family and business your company has destroyed. What I want is to transform Sterling Industries from a predator into a force for good. And what I want right now is for all of you to pack your offices because your services are no longer needed." The silence that followed was deafening. These men had never imagined they could lose everything in a single afternoon. Certainly not to someone they had dismissed so casually just moments before. Richard Sterling stepped forward, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "You have no idea what you're doing. This company is bigger than you can handle. You'll run it into the ground within 6 months." Maya met his gaze steadily. "I ran a successful investment firm for 8 years before this. I've been preparing for this moment my entire career. But thank you for your concern." The reality of their situation was finally sinking in. Decades of unchecked power, of making decisions that affected thousands of lives without consequence, had come to an end. And the person responsible was someone they had never seen as a threat, someone they had underestimated completely. Patterson straightened his tie, trying to salvage some dignity. "If this is legitimate, and I'm not saying it is, we'll need time to review our options." "Of course," Maya agreed. "You have until the end of business today to clear out your offices. Security will escort you from the building after that." As if summoned by her words, several security guards appeared in the hallway. Maya had arranged for additional security, knowing that desperate people sometimes made desperate choices. The executives filed past her toward the elevators, their earlier confidence replaced by shock and anger. Some muttered under their breath. Others made phone calls to their lawyers, but none of them challenged her authority directly. They knew when they were beaten, even if they weren't ready to admit it. Maya watched them go, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and anticipation. This was only the beginning. Taking control of Sterling Industries was just the first step in a much larger plan, one that would reshape not just the company, but the entire industry. As the elevator doors closed on the last of the departing executives, Maya turned to the stunned staff members who had witnessed the entire exchange. "I know this is a lot to process," she said, "but I want everyone to know that your jobs are secure. In fact, most of you will find that working conditions are about to improve significantly. The relief on their faces was immediate and genuine. These were people who had been living under the thumb of demanding, often cruel bosses for years. The prospect of change, even uncertain change, was welcome. Maya made her way to what had been Patterson's office, a corner suite with panoramic views of the city. She set her portfolio on the massive oak desk and looked out at the skyline, thinking about all the people who would be affected by the changes she was about to implement. Her phone buzzed with a text from her lawyer, confirming that all the legal documents had been filed and that her ownership of the company was now a matter of public record. Within hours, the story would break in the financial press, and the shockwaves would ripple through the business world. Maya smiled as she imagined the headlines. A young black woman had just executed one of the most audacious corporate takeovers in recent history, and she was just getting started. The next morning, Maya arrived at Sterling Industries before sunrise, determined to begin the massive task of transforming the company. The building was eerily quiet at this hour, with only security guards and cleaning crews present. She had always been an early riser, but today felt different. Today, she held the future of 30,000 employees in her hands. Her first stop was the executive floor's data center, where she began the painstaking process of reviewing financial records. What she found in those first few hours of investigation made her stomach turn. The corruption at Sterling Industries ran far deeper than she had initially suspected. The company had been systematically defrauding pension funds for over a decade, siphoning money meant for retirees into offshore accounts. They had manipulated environmental impact studies to hide the fact that their manufacturing plants were dumping toxic waste into water supplies in low-income communities. Most damning of all, they had been bribing government officials to secure lucrative contracts while deliberately overcharging taxpayers. Maya's hands trembled as she printed document after document, building a case that would not only justify her actions, but potentially send several former executives to prison. This wasn't just about business revenge anymore. This was about justice for thousands of victims who had suffered because of Sterling Industries' greed. Her phone rang, interrupting her concentration. The caller ID showed her mentor, Dr. Elizabeth Warren, the business school professor who had first encouraged Maya to think beyond traditional career paths. "Maya, what on earth have you done?" Dr. Warren's voice carried a mixture of admiration and concern. "The financial news is calling it the corporate coup of the century." "I've done what needed to be done," Maya replied, continuing to scan through financial documents. "Beth, you wouldn't believe what I'm finding in these records. Sterling Industries isn't just a predatory company, it's a criminal organization. Be very careful, Maya. You've made some powerful enemies. Harold Patterson's family has connections everywhere, including the Justice Department. They won't take this lying down." As if to prove Dr. Warren's point, Maya's office door burst open. Harold Patterson strode in, followed by two men in expensive suits who clearly weren't security guards. "Miss Johnson," Patterson said, his voice dripping with false politeness, "I'd like you to meet my associates, Mr. Crawford and Mr. Hayes from Morris & Crawford & Associates." Maya recognized the law firm's name immediately. They were notorious for their aggressive tactics and their ability to tie up opponents in lengthy legal battles. She had expected this move. "Gentlemen," Maya said calmly, not looking up from her work, "I assume you're here to discuss the transition of leadership?" Crawford, a thin man with cold eyes, stepped forward. "We're here to inform you that our firm is preparing to challenge your acquisition in federal court. We have evidence that your stock purchases involved securities fraud and market manipulation." Maya finally looked up, meeting his gaze with steel in her own eyes. "That's interesting because I have evidence that your client has been committing actual fraud for over a decade." She gestured to the stack of documents on her desk. "Wire fraud, tax evasion, bribery of federal officials, environmental crimes, and pension fund theft. Should I continue? The lawyers exchanged glances, clearly not expecting this response. Patterson's face had gone pale again, just as it had the day before. "Those are private company documents," Hayes protested. "You have no right to access them." "As the majority owner of this company, I have every right to access these documents. And as a citizen, I have a responsibility to report criminal activity to the proper authorities." Maya reached for her phone. "In fact, I was just about to call the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. I'm sure they'll be very interested in these records." "Wait!" Patterson stepped forward, his composure cracking. "Let's not be hasty. Perhaps we can reach some kind of arrangement." Maya set her phone down but kept her hand near it. "What kind of arrangement?" "You clearly have legitimate grievances against this company," Patterson said, perspiration visible on his forehead. "Maybe we can work together to address those issues while maintaining the current leadership structure." Maya almost laughed. Even now, even with overwhelming evidence of their crimes, these men thought they could negotiate their way out of consequences. "Mr. Patterson, yesterday you and your colleagues laughed at me. You dismissed me as a joke, someone who couldn't possibly understand the complexities of running a major corporation. Today you want to work together?" "Look, I admit we may have misjudged the situation," Patterson said, "but destroying this company won't help anyone. Think about the employees, the shareholders, the communities that depend on Sterling Industries for jobs." Maya stood up, walking to the window that overlooked the city. Far below, she could see people hurrying to work, unaware that their lives were about to change dramatically. "You're right about one thing," she said without turning around. "I do think about the employees, the shareholders, and the communities. That's exactly why I can't allow this company to continue operating the way it has been." She turned back to face the three men. "Did you know that Sterling Industries' environmental violations have been linked to a 40% increase in childhood asthma rates in East Baltimore? Did you know that your pension fund theft has left over 3,000 retirees without adequate health care coverage? Did you know that your bribery schemes cost taxpayers an estimated $200 million in overcharges on government contracts?" The room fell silent. Maya could see that her words were hitting home, not because these men felt guilty, but because they were beginning to understand the scope of their legal exposure. Crawford tried a different approach. "Ms. Johnson, you seem like an intelligent businesswoman. Surely you understand that dragging this company through a criminal investigation will destroy shareholder value. Everyone loses in that scenario." "Everyone except the victims who finally get justice," Maya replied. "Everyone except the communities that will finally be able to breathe clean air and drink clean water. Everyone except the retirees who will get their stolen pensions back." Her phone buzzed with a text message. Maya glanced at it and smiled. "Speaking of which, I should let you know that FBI agents are currently executing search warrants at Sterling Industries facilities in 6 different states. They're particularly interested in the Baltimore plant and the Pension Fund Administration office." Patterson's legs gave out, and he collapsed into a chair. The lawyers looked like they had seen a ghost. "How?" Patterson whispered. "I've been working with federal investigators for 6 months," Maya explained. "My acquisition of Sterling Industries was part of a larger operation to expose corporate crime in the defense contracting industry. The Justice Department has been very interested in your company's activities." The truth was even more complex than Maya was revealing. Her investigation had started as a personal quest for revenge, but as she uncovered more evidence of Sterling Industries' crimes, she had reached out to federal investigators. They had been building their own case against the company and were thrilled to have an inside ally. Crawford and Hayes were already backing toward the door, clearly realizing that their client was about to become a liability rather than an asset. "Mr. Patterson, we need to discuss our legal strategy immediately." "There is no legal strategy that's going to save you," Maya said matter-of-factly. "The evidence is overwhelming, and it's already in the hands of federal prosecutors." Patterson looked up at her with something like desperation in his eyes. "What do you want from me? Money?" A position in the company? Just name your price. Maya shook her head. This isn't about money, Mr. Patterson. This is about accountability. For 20 years, you and your colleagues have operated this company like your own personal piggy bank. Consequences be damned. You've poisoned communities, stolen from retirees, and corrupted government officials. The price for that isn't money, it's justice. The door burst open again, and this time it was FBI agents in bulletproof vests. Harold Patterson, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, tax evasion, and bribery of federal officials. As the agents read Patterson his rights and led him away in handcuffs, Maya felt a complex mixture of emotions. There was satisfaction in seeing justice served, but also sadness for all the people who had been hurt by Sterling Industries' actions over the years. The lawyers fled without another word, clearly planning to distance themselves from their now toxic client as quickly as possible. Maya was left alone in the office, surrounded by evidence of decades of corporate crime. Her phone rang again. This time it was news reporters wanting comments on the unfolding scandal. Within hours, the story would dominate headlines around the world. But Maya's work was just beginning. Arresting the criminals was only the first step. Now she had to figure out how to rebuild Sterling Industries from the ground up, transforming it from a corrupt corporation into something that actually served its employees and communities. She thought about her father, who had died 5 years earlier, never seeing justice for what Sterling Industries had done to his business. She thought about her mother, who had worked herself to exhaustion trying to provide for their family after her husband's company was destroyed. And she thought about all the other victims who had been waiting years for someone to hold Sterling Industries accountable. Maya picked up her phone and dialed the number for the company's head of human resources. Sarah? This is Maya Johnson, the new CEO. I need you to call an all-hands meeting for this afternoon. It's time to tell our employees what's been happening and what we're going to do to fix it. As she hung up the phone, Maya looked out at the city skyline once again. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, justice had finally begun to prevail. 6 months after the arrests that shook the corporate world, Maya stood before a packed auditorium in Sterling Industries headquarters. The audience consisted of employees, community leaders, environmental activists, and reporters from around the globe. Today marked the official launch of the company's transformation initiative, something Maya had named the Sterling Redemption Project. The changes had been swift and dramatic. Within weeks of taking control, Maya had implemented a complete overhaul of the company's operations. She had hired a team of ethical business leaders, environmental scientists, and community organizers to help guide the transformation. The old guard of executives had been replaced by people who shared Maya's vision of corporate responsibility. When I walked into this building 7 months ago, Maya began, her voice carrying clearly through the packed auditorium, I was motivated by anger and a desire for revenge. Today, I stand before you motivated by hope and a commitment to redemption. The audience was silent, hanging on every word. Maya's story had captured the imagination of people worldwide, but many were still skeptical about whether real change was possible at such a massive corporation. I know many of you are wondering whether Sterling Industries can truly change after decades of harmful practices. I understand that skepticism because I shared it. But over the past 6 months, I've seen what's possible when good people are given the opportunity to do good work. Maya clicked a remote, and a large screen behind her displayed before and after photos of the Baltimore manufacturing plant. The contrast was stunning. Where once there had been polluted waterways and smoke-belching smokestacks, there were now solar panels, water treatment facilities, and green spaces. Our Baltimore plant was the worst polluter in the Sterling Industries network, Maya explained. Today, it's carbon neutral and actually cleans more water than it uses. We've hired 500 new employees from the local community, many of them people who were previously unemployed due to health issues caused by our pollution. The audience began to murmur with approval, but Maya could see that some remained unconvinced. Changing a reputation built over decades would take time and consistent action. But environmental cleanup is just one part of our mission, Maya continued. We've also established a victim compensation fund with an initial budget of $2 billion. This fund will provide restitution to communities we've harmed, pension benefits to retirees whose funds were stolen, and health care coverage for people whose health was damaged by our environmental violations. In the front row, Maya spotted Mrs. Henderson, an elderly woman whose husband had worked for Sterling Industries for 30 years before dying of lung cancer linked to workplace chemical exposure. The company had denied liability and refused to pay for his medical treatments. Under Maya's new leadership, Mrs. Henderson had received full compensation for her husband's medical bills and a pension that would support her for the rest of her life. Change isn't just about money, though, Maya said. It's about fundamentally altering how we do business. Every decision we make now is evaluated through what we call the community impact lens. We ask ourselves not just whether something is profitable, but whether it helps or harms the people and places where we operate. The screen displayed a new organizational chart showing how community representatives now sat on Sterling Industries' board of directors. Former victims of the company's practices were now helping to guide its future direction. Maya noticed several former Sterling Industries executives in the audience, people who had been forced out during the transition, but who had come to see what their old company was becoming. Some looked angry, others seemed genuinely curious about the changes. "I want to address something that many people have asked me," Maya said, looking directly at those former executives. "Why didn't I just shut down Sterling Industries completely? Why go through the effort of transformation instead of liquidation?" She paused, thinking about all the sleepless nights she had spent wrestling with that exact question. The answer is simple. Because destruction is easy, but construction takes courage. It would have been satisfying to burn this company to the ground, but that would have put 30,000 innocent people out of work and done nothing to help the victims of Sterling Industries' past crimes. Maya clicked the remote again, and the screen showed a map of the United States dotted with green markers. Each marker represented a Sterling Industries facility that had been transformed from a polluter into a clean energy producer. Instead of destruction, we chose transformation. Instead of revenge, we chose redemption, and the results speak for themselves. Sterling Industries is now the largest producer of renewable energy in the Midwest. We're the biggest employer in 12 rural communities that had been economically devastated, and we're proof that corporations can change when they're held accountable and given proper leadership. The audience erupted in applause, but Maya raised her hand for quiet. She wasn't finished yet. "However, I want to be completely honest with all of you. This transformation hasn't been easy, and it's far from complete. We've made mistakes along the way. Some of our cleanup efforts have taken longer than expected. Some employees have struggled to adapt to our new ethical standards, and some communities remain skeptical of our commitment to change." Maya's honesty resonated with the audience. Too many corporate leaders had made grand promises without acknowledging the real challenges involved in implementing change. "That's why we've implemented complete transparency in all our operations," Maya explained. "Every environmental report, every financial statement, and every community impact assessment is published online in real time. If we backslide, if we fail to live up to our commitments, everyone will know immediately." The screen now displayed a live dashboard showing air quality readings, water purity measurements, and employee satisfaction scores from Sterling Industries facilities around the country. The numbers were all in the green, indicating healthy operations. We've also established an independent oversight board composed of environmental scientists, community activists, and former Sterling Industries victims. This board has the power to halt any company operation they believe is harmful, and their decisions are binding. We've essentially given our former victims veto power over our future actions. This announcement surprised even some of Maya's own employees, who hadn't known the full extent of the oversight measures she had implemented. Dr. James Martinez, an environmental scientist from Johns Hopkins University who chaired the oversight board, stood up from the audience. I was initially skeptical when Ms. Johnson approached me about joining this oversight board, he said. I assumed it was a publicity stunt. But after 6 months of working with Sterling Industries' new leadership team, I can honestly say they've exceeded every benchmark we've set for environmental and social responsibility. Maya smiled and nodded her thanks to Dr. Martinez. His endorsement carried significant weight in the scientific community. But perhaps the most important change we've made, Maya continued, is in our corporate culture. The old Sterling Industries rewarded executives for maximizing profits regardless of consequences. The new Sterling Industries rewards employees for finding innovative ways to benefit both the company and the community. The screen displayed photos of Sterling Industries employees who had won the company's new Community Impact Awards. There was the engineer who had designed a water purification system that was now being used in developing countries. There was the marketing manager who had created a program to hire and train formerly incarcerated individuals. There was the accountant who had developed new financial models that factored social and environmental costs into business decisions. These employees represent the future of Sterling Industries, Maya said. They prove that when you give good people the opportunity and incentive to do good work, amazing things happen. Maya's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it and smiled. The message was from her mother, who was watching the presentation on live television from her new home in a retirement community that Sterling Industries had helped fund as part of its victim compensation program. "Proud of you, baby," the message read. "Your father would be amazed at what you've accomplished." Maya felt tears forming in her eyes, but she blinked them back. There would be time for emotion later. Right now, she needed to finish delivering her message to the world. "I want to close with a challenge," Maya said, her voice growing stronger. Sterling Industries was not unique in its past behavior. There are hundreds of corporations around the world that are currently engaging in the same harmful practices that we once did. They're polluting communities, exploiting workers, and prioritizing profits over people. The audience leaned forward, sensing that Maya was building toward something important. "My challenge is this. Hold those companies accountable the way you held Sterling Industries accountable. Demand transparency, demand accountability, and demand transformation rather than just punishment. Because if a company as corrupt as Sterling Industries can change, any company can change." Maya paused, looking out at the diverse crowd of employees, activists, community leaders, and reporters. But don't wait for someone else to force that change. If you're an employee of one of those companies, push for reforms from within. If you're an investor, use your influence to demand better practices. If you're a consumer, support businesses that align with your values. And if you're a community leader, don't be afraid to take on corporate power when it threatens your people. The applause was thunderous and sustained. People were standing, cheering, and some were crying. Maya's story had inspired them, but more importantly, it had shown them that change was possible even in the most unlikely circumstances. As the applause died down, Maya noticed Harold Patterson entering the back of the auditorium. He had been released on bail pending his trial and looked haggard and defeated. Their eyes met across the crowded room, and for a moment, Maya felt something unexpected: pity. Patterson had lost everything: his company, his reputation, his freedom. But more than that, he had lost the opportunity to be part of something meaningful. Maya had offered him and the other former executives the chance to participate in Sterling Industries' transformation to help make amends for their past actions. They had all refused, choosing instead to fight losing legal battles. "Before I conclude," Maya said, I want to say something to anyone who has ever been harmed by corporate greed or abuse of power. Your pain was real, your suffering mattered, and you deserve justice and restitution. She paused, thinking about all the victims she had met over the past months. Families whose health had been destroyed by pollution, retirees whose savings had been stolen, communities whose economic foundations had been undermined by predatory business practices. But I also want you to know that revenge, while satisfying, is ultimately empty. What fills the void left by injustice is not punishment, but prevention. What heals wounds is not making others suffer, but ensuring that the conditions that cause the suffering are permanently changed. Maya clicked off the presentation and stepped away from the podium. Sterling Industries was once a symbol of everything wrong with corporate America. Today, I hope we've become a symbol of what's possible when people refuse to accept that business as usual is good enough. The standing ovation lasted for several minutes. As Maya left the stage, she was surrounded by employees, community leaders, and activists who wanted to thank her for what she had accomplished. But Maya knew that the real test wasn't in the applause she received today. It was in whether Sterling Industries would still be operating ethically and responsibly 10, 20, or 50 years from now. Later that evening, Maya sat in her office looking out at the city skyline. The lights of thousands of homes twinkled in the darkness, each one representing families whose lives had been touched, directly or indirectly, by Sterling Industries' transformation. Her computer chimed with an email notification. It was from a business school student in California who had watched the presentation online. Ms. Johnson, the email read, "Your story has inspired me to change my major from finance to environmental engineering. I want to help create the kind of company Sterling Industries has become." Maya smiled and began typing a response, encouraging the student and offering to connect her with Sterling Industries' internship program. This was how real change happened, not through single dramatic gestures, but through inspiring others to make different choices, one person at a time. As she worked late into the night, Maya reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. What had started as a quest for personal revenge had become something much larger, a demonstration that redemption was possible, that corporations could be forces for good, and that even the most entrenched systems could be changed by people with vision, determination, and courage. The old Sterling Industries was dead, destroyed by its own corruption and greed. In its place stood something new, imperfect, still evolving, but fundamentally committed to serving people and planet rather than just profit. And that, Maya thought as she turned off her office lights and headed home, was a legacy worth building.